Hello there. Well, regular viewers of this channel will know that one of our pushbacks against perceived age discrimination is in respect of the massive motor insurance hikes that we see for drivers aged over 70, and especially those over 79. Now, our recent investigation into the proposed mandatory eyesight testing for drivers in that same age category showed that there was little evidence to support it. We investigated accident rates and statistics for killed or seriously injured collisions and other related data. And we concluded there was insufficient evidence for that older drivers were responsible for or at greater risk of road accidents than other age groups. And the discovery led us to the question of inflated insurance premiums. Given everything we uncovered and have reported on so far, we have to ask, are older drivers really such a great insurance risk? Well, we wanted to find out. So, as reported in our video Show Us the Data, we submitted Freedom of Information requests to several organisations that could hold the key. And you all know how I love Freedom of Information requests. Now, I'm pleased to say that I've now had all the responses back, which I've scrutinised with an intense scrut. And today I'm able to share something pretty momentous and what it means for older drivers. Welcome to Grey Matters. Hello and welcome to Grey Matters, the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters and has relevance, and which looks at issues that matter to the older generation. Now, so many of our older viewers have complained about the insurance hikes that kicked in once they hit 70 and 79, although some of you did report their premiums being lowered between the ages of 70 and 75. But for the majority of you, I felt we should take a closer look at this issue and see if there was any justifiable reason for it, or if it was just age-based pricing, with no evidence to suggest you're all dreadful drivers. In other words, simple age discrimination. So we sent Freedom of Information requests to the 5 main bodies likely to hold the relevant information. Now that's the Department for Transport, the DVLA, the Bank of England, which through the Prudential Regulatory Authority oversees the insurance industry, the Financial Conduct Authority and the Information Commissioner's Office. Now, apart from the DFT and the DVLA, they all declined to comply, citing cost limit rules. Now, usually that's £450 or 18 hours work. The Information Commissioner's Office was slightly more helpful, suggesting ways to narrow the scope, which we always ask for. But the other two simply deemed it was too difficult. Nevertheless, if you think I'm buzzing a bit, you're right. And I'll come back to those other organisations at the end of this edition. Now, as for the other two responders, the Department for Transport and the DVLA, they did their very best to provide everything I asked for, which was a lot, and with no mention of cost limits. They included data from 2022 and 2023, thank you very much, but I'm only going to focus on the latest data available, which is from 2024. Now, our first request was for collision data, and to make it easier to analyse, I asked for it to be divided into age bands from 25 to 85, or 85 plus. Now, you'll notice that in my analysis, I've combined the data for the ages 25 through to 69, because the insurance hikes usually kick in at 70. So for those of you aged between 60 and 69, you're in with the middle-aged lot. I'm sure you won't mind that. I asked the DFT for the number of reported road collisions of all severities in each band, and I also asked the DVLA for the number of licence holders in those same age groups, and the responses revealed something very interesting. Now, obviously, older drivers' collision rate is far lower because there's fewer of them. They represent just 12% of all licence holders. But that alone doesn't prove they're safer. Proportionately, they could still be high risk. So to put these collisions into perspective, I compared collisions to the number of licence holders in that category and the results speak for themselves. Under 25s, there is a 1.72% collision involvement. The 25 to 68 years old is 0.90%, and in the 69 to 85 plus, it's 0.07. So this pattern is now unmistakable. Younger drivers have the highest involvement rate, middle-aged drivers have a moderate rate, and older drivers have an exceptionally low rate, an order of magnitude lower than middle-aged drivers and 25 times lower than young drivers. And this is exactly the kind of clean statistical contrast that strengthens our argument about disproportionate scrutiny of older drivers. Now, I also asked the Department for Transport for the number of drivers in each age band who recorded as at fault or assigned contributory factors. Now, I need to explain here that contributory factors, CFs, have now been replaced by road safety factors, RSFs. Now, both are subjective. They're based on the attending police officer's opinion, and if no officer attended, then no CFs or RSFs were recorded. And there are a few quirks. There's a couple of quirks into this. So a collision may appear twice if drivers from different age bands are involved, which I suppose makes sense. And the transition from CFs, which had 77 possible factors, to RSFs, which only has 37 factors, has changed both the number and type recorded, and that's something to bear in mind when interpreting the data. But here's what I found when checking the figures. Young drivers aged between 16 and 24, road safety factors were assigned to 4,504 collisions, which is 9.5%. Drivers aged from 25 to 69 had road safety factors assigned to 15,293 collisions, making that around 5%. And for drivers aged 70 to 85 plus, the road safety factors were assigned to 1,945 collisions, which is just over half. So proportionately, the over 70s have more collisions where road safety factors were assigned. But remember, the road safety factors are subjective and the data set is small. Now finally, I asked the Department for Transport for the estimated vehicle miles travelled by each age band so I could calculate collisions per mile, and it produced the clearest, most devastating evidence yet. The under 25s ramped up 10.8 million miles, which works out at one collision for every 227,000 miles driven. For those aged between 25 and 69, they had one collision every 1.7 million miles driven. And for drivers aged 70 to 85 plus, they had one collision for every 5.94 million miles driven. There you have it. The older drivers are by far the safest group per mile driven. They are 5.5 times safer than middle-aged drivers and 26 times safer than young drivers. This is exactly the kind of metric that cuts through the noise, and it exposes how unjustified the insurance narrative really is. Okay, so I said I would come back about those bodies that refuse to supply the information on cost grounds. Okay, and you need to know this. When we asked those insurance regulators for the data that would explain these age-based premium hikes, they didn't just refuse on cost ground limits. They also said they couldn't suggest any way to bring the request under the limit, effectively telling us, don't bother trying again. Now, the Information Commissioner's Office did offer a suggestion for narrowing the scope, and I appreciate that. But frankly, now that we've gathered this other evidence, the collision rates, the licence holder details and the miles per collision figures, I'm not inclined to chase that avenue any further. I've no doubt that we wouldn't get anywhere with the insurance companies. If we try and push back and maybe put in more FOIs, I don't think we'll get anywhere. I think they're sitting on information they don't want us to have. If they had data that proves the risk is higher with older drivers, I reckon they'd want to share it. But the picture is already clear. Older drivers are not the high risk group they're made out to be, and because organisations that could justify the insurance hikes either refused to provide the data or said they couldn't, well, that's not transparency and it's not accountability. The bottom line here is that unless the insurance industry can prove we're high risk, the evidence is clear. We're actually the safest group of drivers on the road. So there you go. Guys and gals, once again, I'm sending out a call to action to all of you, and I'm asking you to write an email to people who could make a difference. And once again, I will leave links to downloadable letters and cut and paste letters too. Some MPs you wrote to in our last call to action about eye tests were very responsive and promised to raise the issues in the appropriate places, whilst others simply took the easy way out and cut and pasted the DFT's stock response. So it's still worth writing. And as well as our MPs, we need to lobby the Treasury Select Committee and the Competition and Markets Authority. Now, if as many as possible of you can do this, then perhaps we might effect some change. And don't forget, you might not be in that age bracket yet, but you will be at some point. So you need to protect your future too. So, I mean, this is incredible. We are the safest drivers on the road per mile. The evidence is there. The justification for insurance premium hikes on older drivers, it's evaporated unless they're keeping back information that we can't get hold of. So that's it for now. Please share this video so that others will see it and might respond to our call for action. If you liked this edition, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget you can hype on mobile devices for the first 7 days it's online. That helps the channel enormously. So thank you. Until the next time here on Grey Matters, thanks for joining us, and it's bye for now.